Greetings to non-feminist men and women everywhere on earth. Today is Monday, December 27th, 2015. Welcome to episode number 77 of the Vanguard Report. As you all know, the Vanguard Report is not a megaphone for the men's rights movement. The non-feminist revolution, yes, has many aspects, but what we preach here is not the gospel of the men's rights movement. And that is for two reasons. First, we do not use the androcentric narrative voice. And what is that? Well, we do not speak from a standpoint of male group identity. We do not embrace the male clubhouse perspective. Yes, we do point out the harms which feminism does to men, but only from a universal humanistic and philosophical standpoint, not, heaven help us, from a dude point of view. Oh no. Second, we do not claim to promote men's rights or to talk about so-called male issues. I will say that again. We do not claim to promote men's rights or talk about so-called male issues. Not our mission. And more precisely, we do not make these things a political focus. Focus on that. We do not make such things as men's rights or male issues a political focus. Our political focus is not on men's rights or male issues, but rather feminism's wrongs. Not men's rights, feminism's wrongs. So, if somebody accuses us of not caring about men, as the old cliche goes, then we have our response all ready to go. No, we don't care about men. That's not our gig. Well, maybe we do care about men personally, or maybe we don't. That's just not politically what we're here for. Politically, we're here to promote the idea that maybe feminism is not such a good idea. That's our mission, mainly. And along the way, yes, we talk about some of the bad things that are happening to men. But nobody can accuse us of not caring about men. That's like accusing you of not doing some kind of work that's not your line of work. Got that? In the end, we wish to cut feminism down to size until it is just another faceless competitor in the noisy, crowded marketplace of ideas, competing alongside of Scientology, homeopathy, Lysenkoism, phlogiston, Ptolemaic cosmology, flat earth theory, and all of the rest. Feminism is just another competitor in the marketplace of ideas, just another doctrine, just another ideology, just another belief system. Why some have even compared feminism to a religion. I won't go there right now, but I think you get my drift. At any rate, we look forward to the day when feminists are booted off of university campuses and are seen peddling their little patriarchy pamphlets door to door, like Mormon missionaries or Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't believe that feminism will ever entirely disappear. No. But we're happy to see it continue existing in a vestigial form as, well, a laughingstock. So once again, the Vanguard Report is not a platform for the men's rights movement, and that is for two reasons. Reason number one, we do not use the androcentric narrative voice. Reason number two, our political focus is on feminism's wrongs rather than men's rights. That is why we are not the men's rights movement. Those two reasons just given. All right, there is no co-host today, just me. Since Nick Redding, true son of the Alberta Prairie, left, I have had no permanent co-host, so I play musical co-hosts. All right, first up, cue number one on your cue list. This is the new video recently put out called The Feminist Problem. Yes, we want to make the world aware of the feminist problem because, well, after all, feminism creates so many problems for so many people in so many ways. Feminism itself is just one big headache. It's just one big problem. So we have a name for it, the feminist problem. That is a name to be used and to be popularized any way you can. The feminist problem. So that's cue number one. That will take you to the Men's Rights Edmonton YouTube channel where the video is located. One of the places where the video is located. We're locating it other places as well. The response to the video has been pretty good, I must say. We've gotten approaching 1,300 views and about, I think it is 160 upvotes and a mere 4 downvotes. And the other places where we've housed the video are doing pretty well as well. One of them is approaching 1,000 views and has something like 50 upvotes and 0 downvotes. The point is that this thing seems to appeal to people. People seem to like it, and people seem to flock to it to see it. So, how can you help? Well, go there, download the thing. If you have a YouTube channel, download that thing and then re-upload it onto your channel and mirror the video. It ought to drive some traffic to your YouTube channel, so it'll help you. It will also help all of us if we want to promote the cause. And the cause in this case is non-feminist solidarity. Yeah, that has a fine ring to it, I say. Non-feminist solidarity. We want to promote non-feminist solidarity. And the general idea that, well, you know, there's another way to be than feminist. You can be feminist, but you can also be not feminist. And it's a fine and wonderful thing to be a non-feminist. And by the way, the definition of a non-feminist person is a person who is not a feminist. It's just that simple. It's almost not even a label. Well, you could use it as a label, but really it's a description. You say, I'm not a feminist, it just means you're not a feminist. A non-feminist is a person who is not a feminist. That's rather broad, I think you will agree, but that's the chief virtue of it. You can't read much into it. It's broad, and yet in a way it's narrow because it narrows the whole conversation down to a single point. And that is the question of coexistence in this world of two principles, feminism and the lack of feminism. It also sets the stage for a political phenomenon which you might call the realization or the The politicalization of the non-feminist sector. Basically, the non-feminist sector needs to come to life. It needs to stop being something empty with no voice. The non-feminist sector is a thing as opposed to a nothing. And it needs to become a political identity, and people who are not feminists need to become aware of themselves and aware that they have numbers on their side and that they could potentially have a voice, and that with this voice, they could say something to feminism. Feminism has been talking to everybody else long enough. Now it's everybody else's turn to turn around and talk back to feminism. Do you follow me? Lack of feminism is a political identity. All right. Now, cue number 2. This is an online cafe press outlet where you can go and get one of those cool t-shirts with the universal non-feminist banner or logo printed on the front. You can order them there. That's cue number 2. You can also order a whole bunch of other stuff: tote bags, coffee mugs, computer covers, on it goes. Whatever strikes your fancy. There's all kinds of stuff there with the non-feminist logo printed on it. And a way to let the world know where you stand, if you dare to be so bold. Well, just a heads up. A lot of people out there tend to look askance at anything not feminist. They're either feminists or they're just not political. Whatever, be prepared for a little bit of weirdness, let us say, from other people. But use your own discretion. Anyway, that's cue number 2 on your cue list. Go there. This will contribute to the cause. It will also contribute monetarily to Men's Rights Quincy in Quincy, Illinois, which is something that is dedicated to helping men. See, we do care about helping men because we are helping to fundraise for somebody who does care about helping men. So you can't altogether say that we don't care about helping men. That accusation really won't hold water. All right, moving along. What do we got here? Oh, yes, I just got me a new blog. Cue number 3. The name of my new blog is The Counter Feminist Express. Basically what it is, it's a repository for short items frequently updated. It fills the need to have a place for short items frequently updated. My other blog, called Counter Feminist 2, is a repository for long, weighty, substantial articles, and there's plenty of those. No, I don't have the link right now. It's counterfem2.blogspot.com if you're curious. Anyway, my new blog is called The Counter Feminist Express. That's cf-express.blogspot.com. Anyway, look at cue number 3. That'll take you right there. All right, on with the program. First, a trend separating men's rights from anti-feminism. Here we go. We touched upon this just now. You know how they say, you don't care about men's rights, you're just anti-feminist? What are they doing here? Well, let's look into that a little bit. Let's look into that. The feminists are trying to pound a wedge between men's rights and anti-feminism. They're trying to pound a wedge between these two things. They're trying to separate them into separate piles. They're trying to push them into different corners. They are trying to effect a divorce between these two principles. Now, as many of you know, you can't separate men's rights or opposing men's rights or advocating men's rights from opposing feminism. The minute you dig into promoting men's rights and you begin to realize the part that feminism plays in eroding men's rights and compromising men's rights, you realize that those two things are totally wrapped around each other. You can't pull them apart without compromising the whole enterprise that you're engaged in. Okay, now some of us may focus more on the one or more on the other. You know, that's just a matter of personal choice and personal taste. But really, by the end of the day, they are the same thing. They can't be understood as separate things. So anyway, let's dig into this a little bit more. The feminists are chiefly motivated when they do this attempted splitting or tearing apart thing. They are chiefly motivated by fear of anti-feminism. They know that they are in trouble because so many angry voices are talking against them. And what else to call that if not anti-feminism? That makes sense. Somebody is against you. Seems to me they are anti-you. Okay? People are against feminism, not against women, mind you. Against feminism, then I think it makes sense to say that they are anti-feminist. They are opposed in some way, on some level, to feminism. Okay, so this is what the feminists fear. And yeah, if I were them, I guess I too would be fearful. So the feminists are attempting a balancing act. They are finally now of late compelled to admit that yes, men really do have problems that must be taken seriously. The feminists are finally forced to admit this. They can't laugh at this. They can't sweep this under the rug. They can't ignore this like they have done in years past. It's just not cool anymore for them to do this or to appear to do this. For the sake of appearances, they have to at least seem to give a rip about men's problems. Okay? They just want to look respectable. They're politicians, you know. They say one thing, they seem to be one thing, even when secretly they are something else. However, at the same time, they, the feminists, don't want people, us, the world in general, to be discussing feminism's complicity in men's problems. Yes, feminism had a hand in creating men's problems. A lot of the bad things that are happening to men were either the result of feminist innovation in some way or benefit feminism in some way. Feminists don't care about what's happening to men. Number one, because they don't care about men. They don't care what harm comes to men. Also for the reason that the more problems men appear to have, the more it undermines the narrative of feminism, which is that women are oppressed, which is that women have all the problems and men live life on easy street. Well, it's more complex than that, but basically what they fear is to have their narrative undermined, and therefore the whole purpose of feminism, the whole reason, the whole raison d'etre for feminism to be called into question. And then again, finally, in some cases, they are complicit in men's problems. I mean, this rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper, but I think you get the idea. They want to control the conversation on men's problems, and they don't want the world in general to be discussing their complicity in men's problems. They're profiting off of men's problems. So the feminist effort is to steer the talk in a less menacing direction, which means less menacing to feminism. They want to rebrand themselves as good guys by insisting that they are not against men's rights and further insisting that feminism has all the answers. Does anybody remember Big Red? We're working on it. Feminism is working on your problems. Heaven help us, feminism is working on your problems. For good measure, they will even toss in that moldy old chestnut about patriarchy hurts men too. And just as a side note here, remember what they really mean when they say the word patriarchy. Does anybody remember? Okay, patriarchy in fem speak is code for male power. Male power. That's what patriarchy is. By the end of the day, it boils down to one thing: male power. Patriarchy means male power in any form that male power might occur. That's it. Patriarchy equals male power. All right. In short, now that a conversation about men's problems has become unavoidable, they can't get away from it. Now that such a conversation has become unavoidable, they are willing to let that conversation happen, but only on condition that they control it. In other words, they want the conversation about men's problems to be a feminist conversation. A feminist conversation. A conversation swirling around feminism, entirely contained within the feminist worldview, the feminist paradigm. A conversation conducted on feminist terms and thoroughly saturated with the flavor and culture of feminism. There you go. They want the conversation about men's problems to be a feminist conversation. They don't want anybody else getting in there. That is why they don't want anti-feminism in the picture at all. That's why they want to split anti-feminism off from men's rights or men's issues, because they know that anti-feminist conversation cannot end. Pardon me, they know that anti-feminist conversation cannot end well for feminism. And, by the way, incidentally, that is equally true of a conversation which is merely non-feminist. Let me summarize that briefly. A non-feminist, that is a person who is not a feminist, a non-feminist is simply an anti-feminist waiting to happen. And an anti-feminist is a non-feminist in a hurry. By the end of the day, there is no fundamental difference between a non-feminist and an anti-feminist. It's just the degree of development of opposition to feminism. So, accordingly, the feminists are looking for so-called MRAs who will politically geld themselves by divesting of their opposition to feminism. The oft-heard sentiment that you don't really care about men, you're just anti-feminist, aims to produce exactly that effect. If it all goes as planned, the anti-feminists will isolate themselves into a corner where they will make an easier target. Meanwhile, the more compliant MRAs can be easily pulled into a feminist conversation and assimilated to the feminist project. That's what happens when you push anti-feminism out of the picture and throw it into outer darkness. Now, we too want to isolate the anti-feminist element. Pay attention, here's where it gets interesting. We too want to isolate the anti-feminist element and, in a manner of speaking, separate it from the issue of men's rights. However, we have different reasons for this. Whereas the feminists want to do this in order to draw the heat away from feminism, as I have explained, we want to do it so as to concentrate that heat as much as possible. Let me say that again. We want to concentrate the heat on feminism as much as possible. We have understood that beaming attention upon feminism in a narrow way is like directing attention toward a person who wants to remain inconspicuous while doing something illicit. Such a person wants to slip through the crowd unremarked. They want to be invisible. The last thing they want is to attract a general gaze for any reason whatsoever. That is called putting them on Front Street. Putting them on Front Street. Hey man, don't put me on Front Street. For this reason, we aim to establish strict anti-feminism as a voice separate from men's rights. See, we're separating anti-feminism from men's rights, but we're doing it for a very different reason than the feminists want to do it. We aim to establish strict anti-feminism as a voice separate from men's rights, a separate political stream, a separate message stream with its own inherent discipline, to be perceived differently by the world at large. Yeah, we are the strict anti-feminist people, and the men's rights people, well, that's those people over there. Now, go talk to them if you want to talk to the men's rights movement, because, we are not the men's rights movement. We're something else. I mean, we're friends with them. We have nothing against them, but we have a separate gig. We're like that work crew building a house that works on a separate aspect of building the house. We're a separate trade. We have the plumbers, we have the framers, we have the drywall guys, we have the excavators, we have the guys that pour the cement, we have the guys that put in the electrical wiring. All these different specialists who work together to get the house finally together and up and functioning. So yeah, our gig is strict anti-feminism. Our gig is putting feminism on Front Street. Because, after all, feminism just wants to slip quietly through the crowd, doesn't want to attract attention to itself. Oh, it wants to talk your ear off, but it doesn't want to talk about itself specifically. It does not want to expand upon its own devices and its own workings. It doesn't want you to lift the hood and tinker with the motor, because that's what happens when you start to talk about feminism. You start to analyze it, you start to take it apart intellectually. Suddenly, feminism itself is under scrutiny in a radical way, and that is just the thing they want to avoid. So that's why we aim to establish strict anti-feminism as a voice separate from men's rights, because we want to put feminism on Front Street. We want to put feminism on Front Street. The feminists think they can isolate anti-feminism in order to direct social artillery fire against it, but they little realize how quickly this could backfire. For when they isolate anti-feminism as a target of attention, they also isolate feminism as a target of attention. And this induces people to take a closer look. Yeah, at feminism. You know, you talk about anti-feminism, you're just a whisper away from talking about feminism, because of course those two topics are right next door to each other. You're talking about anti-feminism, you are implicitly talking about feminism too, because of course it's always in your mind. If you're against feminism, you're thinking, well, okay, what is feminism? Yeah, see how that isolates the conversation onto the topic of feminism. This is something the feminists didn't think about. But, you know, they do want to separate anti-feminism, critique of feminism, anything along that line, from the business of men's rights, so they can take over the business of men's rights and sell you a feminist solution to men's problems. So if you want to know how we strict anti-feminists help out with men's rights, well, we are exposing what feminism is doing in this area and so many others. Okay, we're the specialists. Somebody has to specialize in looking at feminism and dealing with feminism narrowly as a topic unto itself. That's why our focus is on feminism. We are the strict anti-feminists, and yes, we are non-feminists. So, does feminism really want that kind of scrutiny? Does feminism really want to be put on Front Street? I think not, but that is what it will get. Next, let's talk about something called intellectual perestroika. And intellectual perestroika is, well, intellectual rebuilding or restructuring. What could this be? What is intellectual perestroika? All right. In my wilder moments, I dream of sweeping the board clean. I dream of demolishing most of the concepts, categories, and nomenclatures that we have developed over the years. I dream of building up from scratch to gain a more politically efficient view of the struggle and where we stand and what is to be done. In short, I dream of intellectual perestroika. Our struggle, let's just call it the resistance, has been a chaotic affair. Yes, it has settled into an ordered system, but that system is constrained by the legacy of our early political ignorance. You know, way back in 2003, 2004, we didn't know what we know now. We are so much wiser now in 2015 than we were, say, in 2005. We know the score a lot better now than we did back then. Our revolution, our resistance has settled into an ordered system, but that system is constrained by the legacy of our early political ignorance. Our system crystallized from a place of political ignorance, and although we've gone beyond that ignorance, we are still, in many ways, living within the straitjacket imposed by that early ignorance. This was from a time when we were groping in the dark without a map. Well, we've mapped that map a bit since then, but we are currently operating under the burden of a flawed design, which is properly no design at all. It just happened. To begin, it was a mistake to label the resistance to feminism as a so-called men's movement. This, admittedly, is insight by hindsight. How could we have known way back then what we know now? No, we couldn't have. We had to run the experiment and see what came out the other end. There was no other way. But the point is that now we know better, or at least we ought to know better. For example, in the earliest days, we had not yet formulated gynocentrism as a concept. But with the benefit of this concept, gynocentrism, we know that anything bearing the motif of men's rights or male issues is a political slow starter, an overloaded truck lumbering up a steep mountain road. Repeated observation has confirmed this. A related idea, less talked about but equally important, is the androcentric narrative voice. I talked about that a while ago. The androcentric narrative voice. Another name for this would be the male clubhouse perspective. I am forever meeting men who bemoan the male condition from a subjectively male standpoint as members of class male. Mind you, this is not a bad thing. There is nothing morally amiss about this. My objection is that it's politically inefficient, meaning that there is something operatively amiss about it. To be an efficient political operator in the realm of public rhetoric, one should not speak from the male clubhouse, but rather one should speak as a voice of reason upon planet Earth, as a universal philosopher of the human condition, if you will. Feminism is, frankly, no good for anybody. And the good news is that a lot of people, more and more people, are waking up to this. These are the people you must reach. And you won't do that by sitting in the male clubhouse, lamenting the male condition, or whining about the friend zone and similar crap. This will only land you in the feminist dung wrestling zone. But you've got to be way more clever than that. You've got to separate the personal from the political, and you've got to stay on message. On message. In politics, message matters. If you make feminism's wrongs the focal point of your public rhetoric, and you galvanize the world with a knowledge of those wrongs, then men's rights can easily roll right along on the highway you are building. Think of anti-feminism as the icebreaker, clearing the sea lanes so that men's rights can sail. Men's rights and men's issues will not be lost or forgotten. Oh no. Intellectual perestroika will bundle them along with everything else. But the skin that wraps around that bundle will be something different. So as for MRA, MRM, PUA, MGTOW, masculinist, masculist, manosphere, and all the crumbling semantic stonework of the legacy discourse, in my wilder moments, I can somehow see myself swinging a wrecking ball through that entire kit and caboodle. And I can even imagine myself picking some of the choice bits from the rubble and maybe incorporating them into something new. And then, sweeping the rest of it over a cliff? Now, don't worry. This is only a pipe dream. Something that I dream in my wildest moments. All right, time to carry on. Next, we continue in the vein of university activism. And we've been talking about this for several episodes now, maybe 3 or 4 episodes. It's a lot of stuff you can do on campus in a strict anti-feminist vein. Of course, you don't want to call yourself anti-feminist. You just say, we're not feminist. But think about what we're doing here. We are hacking the cultural firewall which wraps around the feminist worldview. We are hacking the cultural firewall which wraps around the feminist worldview. Remember our main mission? That is to disestablish the feminist worldview. The feminist worldview is the hegemonic worldview that rules our lives intellectually from the top down. It is the thing we are not permitted to criticize. And for that reason, we know that it rules us. It's the king of the mountain. So, how do we hack the cultural firewall which wraps around the feminist worldview? How can we accomplish that? Well, hacking, there's a lot of ways you can do a hack. There's all kinds of hacks you can do in the business of hacking. And here we're talking about just one. There are potentially a multitude of ways to do this, but one of the best holes that I can think of in that feminist firewall is the post-secondary education system, college, university. That's a big venue of feminist activity and, as we all know, feminist indoctrination. Now, feminism is not the world, and feminists must be made to understand this in a compelling way, which they cannot ignore and cannot forget. The university campus is a prime location for setting such a process in motion, as well as being one of the best possible missionary fields. A lot of souls to be won on that missionary field, which is the university campus. So our method of cultural firewall hacking is to introduce non-feminist alterity into the university campus community, into the social chemistry, in a way that reconfigures that social chemistry. When the feminist establishment gets confronted on a daily basis with an alien culture, that's us, this will drive home the point that feminism is not the world. They will have no choice but to arrive at such an understanding. It will be thrust upon them. They will have no choice but to arrive at such an understanding and to arrive at the elevated self-awareness which goes along with such an understanding. They're not the world. There's something else in the world besides them. The world is bigger than them. Non-feminist alterity. That word alterity, it means otherness. We are the other. We are the world beyond the feminist world, and we are not empty space to be filled. We are not passive clay to be manipulated. We are not unsettled wilderness to be deforested and broken to the plow. Oh no. Non-feminist alterity means non-feminist otherness. And it is precisely your otherness which they must learn to get along with. And folks, here I must take a quick break from the program Something has come up that I need to deal with. I need to go away from the computer for about a minute, but I will be back. Everybody hang tight. I will be back. Okay, I am back. Back to the program. Non-feminist alterity means non-feminist otherness. Otherness. And it is precisely your otherness which they must learn to get along with. You are not them. They are not you. We are not them. They are not us. We're not going away, and they better get used to it. We've made their world a little bit more complicated. Oh, all right, a lot more complicated. So let's face it, the feminist establishment is bloody well entrenched on most university campuses. They consider the university campus to be their turf, and they are jealous of interlopers and outside agitators. So if you are a non-feminist in one of those places, you must keep your voice quiet and keep your head below the parapet. If you're a nice little non-feminist and don't make any trouble, you'll probably get along okay. But if you start to raise your head, even in a non-aggressive way, you can probably expect trouble or hassle or something along that line. But seriously now, the university campus is not a feminist community. Don't make me laugh. The university campus is not a feminist community. They like to think that it is, but there's no reason why it should be. There's no reason why it has the right to be that. There's no reason why it can't be some other kind of community. Don't ever let them tell you that the university campus is a feminist community. The university campus is your community too, especially if you put yourself financially onto thin ice in order to be there. Yeah, it's your community too. You ought to feel totally welcome and totally at home in your campus community, and you should settle for nothing less than that. Don't let the feminists tell you that the university campus is a feminist community. They got to play nice and deal with other members of the campus community. They're slow to catch on. This point seems to stick in their craw, but so be it. It's a lesson they will need to learn. So yeah, don't listen to their garbage about any so-called feminist community. It's everybody's community, that university campus. Don't you forget it, and more importantly, don't let them forget it. Well, maybe not more importantly, but it's still pretty important. The main thing is you don't forget it. So, talking about the university campus, let's just give a quick run through, a quick recap of most of the ground that we've covered in previous episodes. talking about how to get started. You want to establish a non-feminist presence on your campus, so you set up a group. This group can be as small as one person, in theory. I don't think it wants to be any smaller than that, but it could be just one person. It could be just you. It could be 2 people. It could be 10 people. I don't know, but it's the thought that counts. And that's how you get started. You form a group of whatever size. Then you start a website. And this website is going to be used for a lot of things. You're going to put all kinds of material onto that website. But for now, just get the website started. I suspect the website will probably be a blog. That sounds like the easiest way to do it. So get your website going. Think of a catchy name for it. Think of a name for your group. The name of your group should include the word non-feminist. Now, remember, this is not a men's issues group that you're starting. If you want to start a men's issues group, I guess you will, and I wish you all the best with that. Interesting little side note about men's issues groups. We've got a few of them already going in Canada, and something tells me that the phenomenon is going to spread, that there's going to be men's issues groups in various forms mushrooming up on college campuses. I can see that as a growing trend. Of course, there will be resistance, but I see that as the future. Okay, so there's going to come a time when men's groups on campus are not going to be so controversial anymore. The feminists will just, they'll deal with it. They'll accommodate. They'll try all kinds of things. But basically, I see a possible future for men's issues groups on university campuses, after a bit of struggle, of course. So we're doing something different here. Yeah, men's issues groups will become at some point respectable or semi-respectable. But we're talking about a pure, strict anti-feminist thing. But of course, you don't want to call it anti-feminist. Your stance in regard to feminism will be clear enough eventually, but you want to use the term non-feminist because you want to establish yourself on a footing of non-aggression. Anti-feminist, for those of you who understand how rhetorical discipline works, is a grappling point, more of a grappling point than is the term non-feminist. Non-feminist is just slippery. You can't get hold of it. It sounds harmless, okay? They have a hard time making any headway in the game of rhetoric against something that calls itself non-feminist. You're just not feminist. They're arguing against the right to not be feminist. And that involves them in a discussion that now they'd rather not spend their time on. Okay, so you've got your website up there, you've got your group named. You want to put an initial statement, a mission statement, a manifesto. We call it a bulkhead statement. A bulkhead because it seals you into a compartment where the buck stops here. You are a separate group with a separate identity. They cannot conflate you with somebody else who might seem to have a similar purpose. What concerns your group begins and ends with your group. You are not some other group. You are just your group. And your bulkhead statement will make this clear. Anything you want the world to know about your group and your mission, the way you want to be seen, well, you either define yourself or somebody or something else will define you. Your bulkhead statement is your great opportunity to define yourself. So I recommend you give a lot of careful thought to the composition of your bulkhead statement. And right near the head of your bulkhead statement, I urge you seriously to post a commitment to nonviolence. In more words or less, you need to make it clear that you do not condone violence as a political method. Now, this puts you in the clear. This makes it clear where you stand. And somewhere down the road, if somebody decides to get violent with you, well, then you've got the moral high ground. You've got an edge over them. So definitely include a commitment to nonviolence in your bulkhead statement. I mean, they're trying to paint people like us as violent. They've been doing this for a long time, and so you've got to counteract that. It's ridiculous, of course, to think that just because you're not feminist, you must be a terrible person. But that's the picture they want to paint. That's the reality they want to, or the narrative that they want to impose. That if you're not a feminist, you are somehow, linked to Elliot Rodger in some mysterious web of karma. I don't know. But that's how they want to play it. So having the commitment to nonviolence in your bulkhead statement, along with anything else you put in your bulkhead statement, is your chance to counteract their efforts in this realm. Next, you will want to print up any kind of paper media that you think you might be needing. And I think chiefly that will be leaflets or small stickers. And these are mainly to advertise your presence on the campus to the members of the campus community, both students and faculty in that community. Probably your leaflet will consist of a short tagline or slogan and then a website address. People will read the text. They'll get just a very rough idea of what you are, and they'll see a website they can go to. And if all goes well, they will be curious enough to check it out. You could also put one of those, what do they call them, QR codes on your leaflet. That's another possibility, so they can scan it with their mobile device. That's something you can do. All right. Have those leaflets printed up and ready to go. And now you will want to be spreading those around campus because this is your form of advertising. Well, one of them. You might think of others, but that occurs to me right off the bat. So what you are doing here, what you aim to do, is to announce your presence on the campus, make yourself known to everybody before you even do anything at all. Just this process of announcing yourself and making yourself known, that, funny as it sounds, is a form of activism, as I hope to show. Making yourself known, introducing yourself, you're inserting yourself into the campus culture, into the intellectual and social life of the campus. You are a factor in the life of the campus. That's what you're doing here. You are a quantity. You are a datum. You are a force. By establishing your presence, you are establishing all of this. So, start your website, write your bulkhead statement, distribute your printed material around the campus, or by whatever means may occur to you, make your presence known on campus. Hello, we're here, and we're not feminist. Basically, that's it. What are you doing in the long run? Well, you are aiming to establish within the culture of the campus community a thing that we call the culture of critique, the counter-feminist culture of critique. Basically, this puts the world on notice that feminism is no longer a sacred cow. It is now intellectual open season on feminism. It's okay to do two things here. It's okay to stand up and say you're not a feminist. It's also okay to speak freely about feminism itself from a non-feminist perspective. This is not a feminist conversation that you are initiating here. This is a non-feminist conversation that you are initiating here. Let's be clear about that. It's okay to not be a feminist, and it's okay to speak your mind freely about feminism, because after all, that's intellectual freedom and that's free speech, and you have a right to it. Now, how far you go with this and how fast you go is up to you. You've got to gauge that for yourself. It's a judgment call. But you may find that simply announcing your presence is a political act in itself. In fact, it is a political act in itself. Merely suggesting the idea that there is something outside of feminism and that that something is embodied in the bodies of living people who are out there walking around. This is a threat to the feminist community, any feminist community, anywhere, to be confronted with the idea that there is something other than feminism and that that something is alive and sentient and conscious and capable of talking back to feminism. And just popping up on the horizon in that way, it has a powerful signaling effect. You'll see just announcing your presence all by itself is a political act. Even if you never do anything, even if you don't say very much, just walking around and saying, hey, I'm not a feminist, that's really something. That's going to bug the hell out of them. And you can play upon this effect. You might initially do nothing more than just saying, I am not a feminist. This is where you can wear some of those nifty non-feminist t-shirts, the ones that you can order through the link that I gave earlier. Yeah, you can get some of those t-shirts. You could be rocking those t-shirts around campus. That's one thing you could do. Or you could be drinking your coffee from a non-feminist coffee mug, if that suits your fancy. You can do that. You could be rocking that non-feminist tote bag. You could be wearing a nice little non-feminist lapel button stuck to your coat collar. There's all kinds of things you can do. But the point is, you are high profiling yourself as a person who is not a feminist. I mean, after all, there's two kinds of people in the world, right? There are feminist people, and then there are non-feminist people. And we can't all be feminist people, you know. Some of us are not feminist people. Well, the dirty little secret that we all know perfectly well is that feminism doesn't like competition. Feminism is the only game in town, or they want us to think that they're the only game in town, and they want to shove everybody else out of town, and they want to be, well, yeah, the only game in town. But we're here to put them on a new schedule. So, simply announcing your presence, just the fact that you exist, saying, hello, we're here, we're not feminists, get used to it. Yeah, just that. That alone sends a message, a very powerful message. And I think you'll get some kind of a response out of that. Eventually, they're going to say something, they're going to do something, but it's going to make them very uncomfortable. And if it does, if it makes them uncomfortable, it's their problem. It says something about them. It says not much about you. The fact that they are uncomfortable or that they are made uncomfortable by the presence of something different, something that is not them. They have a problem with diversity, it would seem. All right. Now you want to take it to the next stage. You could go and start saying something. You could initiate an active culture of critique on your university campus. It's up to you how far and how fast you go with this. I mean, you are the judge of conditions on the ground. And me sitting here talking about this in the abstract, I can't possibly hope to know what you will know when you're there in the real world. I'm just here to put out ideas that you might find useful. Anyway, what you cannot criticize is what rules you, remember. And you cannot criticize feminism. That's true not only on the university campus, it's true just about everywhere. There is effectively no non-feminist political voice in the world. There's plenty of people quietly grumbling about feminism, but they are not a political identity. Non-feminist people have not quite yet begun to conceptualize themselves as a political class, and they really ought to do that. The non-feminist sector needs to become something. It is nothing that needs to become something, because after all, it is, in a very real sense, everything. Non-feminist people are, at least 4/5 of the world, and most of the universe runs upon principles and laws that have nothing to do with feminism. If feminism collapsed into a black hole of some kind, the universe would keep running just fine. The world would not get worse for want of feminism. If the feminist stranglehold over the culture suddenly stopped, the world would go on and we would get along just fine. There would not be any kind of a disaster if feminism suddenly took a nosedive and went out of business. Okay, it's important to understand. So, the bottom line for this culture of critique is that all feminist claims and theories are open to question. And I do mean all feminist claims and theories are open to question. All. Every last one of them. Every one you can possibly think of. If a feminist says the sky is blue, sure, you can question that. All, bar none, all feminist claims and theories are open to question. It's intellectual, open season on feminism. That's the culture of critique. That is intellectual freedom. That is intellectual diversity. And that is what you want to make happen on the university campus and eventually everywhere, but we'll get to that later. Remember, the feminist establishment will always no platform you because, after all, they're in control and because you are not feminist, and they don't want you to have a voice if you're not feminist. Nothing threatens them more than the prospect of non-feminist people suddenly crystallizing themselves into a political identity. Just that thing alone scares the bejesus out of them. So they will always no platform you because you are not feminist. That goes with the territory. Well, here you have created your own platform. You set up your website, you have captured the eye of the public, you've directed your public, you've defined your public, and you've directed your public in your direction. They're aware of you. They're waiting for you to say something. They'll be keeping an eye on you or keeping an ear on you, and they will be soaking up whatever you throw out there. You have created your own platform, and you have set it into operation in the heart of the feminist citadel. And that's what the university campus is. It is the heart of the feminist citadel. You've created your own platform and set it into operation. Anyway, you've got your website set up, you've introduced yourself. Now let's run down a short list of possibilities, things you might do with this situation that you've set up for yourselves. There are plenty of possibilities. So what are you going to use the website for? After you've gotten beyond the stage of simply announcing your presence, making your presence known, well, chiefly, I think you ought to do this. You should use the website to share counter-feminist information, because after all, on the university campus, about all you're going to be getting is feminist information. The only conversation you're going to be getting is a feminist conversation, but you want to introduce counter-feminist information and counter-feminist conversation, or non-feminist if you want to put it that way, but stay away from the word anti-feminist. All right, I think we have that well understood. Now you will want to practice rhetorical discipline. And if you don't know what rhetorical discipline is, well, I wrote the book on that subject. Not really a book. I did not include the link to this on tonight's cue list. I just didn't think of that. But if you Google up AVFM, rhetorical discipline, that'll pull it up for you. AVFM, rhetorical discipline. Punch that up in Google, and the first page you come to, near the top of the list, you will see a link to my essay on rhetorical discipline. And if you're going to do this campus thing, I strongly encourage you to absorb what is shared in that essay. You will find it valuable. And that's why I wrote it, because I thought it was something valuable, because I thought it would help. All right. The important thing is, as you are presenting information on your website and injecting it into the mind of the campus community, the important thing is that you don't sound abusive. You may be tempted to curse feminism, but don't do it. An important aspect of rhetorical discipline is tonal mastery, and you want to have tonal mastery in all you do. In your communication, whether it's spoken or written, you want to have tonal mastery. Remember, AVFM, rhetorical discipline, Google, okay? And you'll get the short skinny on all of that. So, tonal mastery, you don't want to sound abusive. You just want to recite the bare facts. You should sound like you are simply reading facts and figures out of an encyclopedia. That's it. You're just sharing information. Don't sound like you're cursing feminism. Just expose it. Talk about it. Say hard things about it, but say it in a very, very nonchalant tone of voice. That's important. Okay? If you fail in tonal mastery, if you neglect tonal mastery, you're going to give them a grappling point. You don't want to do that. Okay, you want to play this game like a professional. So don't sound abusive. All right, now there are 3 possible levels of information that you might want to be presenting on your website in your campus activism. The first one, we've already talked about it. You're announcing your presence. You're saying, we are here and we're not feminist. Get used to it. Well, you might want to go easy on the get used to it part, because that sounds, a bit arrogant, and cocky. You might want to tone that down a little bit. But basically, you're announcing that you're here and that you're not feminist, and that you aim to establish a non-feminist community, that you aim to encourage non-feminist people to express themselves, that you want the non-feminist voice in whatever form to be heard. You're establishing non-feminist as a political identity, in effect, in the microcosm of the university campus. Now, the second level of information, just factual information. which contradicts the feminist narrative, which goes against the feminist narrative, which undermines the feminist narrative, which shows that the feminist narrative is wrong. And you'll do that by showing that the feminist narrative is mainly, if not entirely, supported, propped up by wrong information. And we don't need to recite all of the wrong information that feminism puts into the world. We all know how much wrong information feminism puts into the world. Your point here is to share this with eager young minds on your university campus, information they won't get in the university campus environment. But you're there to see that they get that kind of information. And you will post it on your website, the website that you have advertised and made known to people on your university campus community. And they will be going there. When they know about it, they'll be talking about it, and they will be going there regularly to see what they can see and to see what you might say next. So things like facts and figures, domestic violence statistics, arguments against rape culture, government reports debunking campus rape statistics. You get the idea. On and on it goes. That's the sort of thing you can share. This can be original writing of your own, which incorporates that information. You can have direct links to government publications or CDC publications or what have you. I mean, you decide how to do that, but what you're basically doing here is sharing information which contradicts and undermines the feminist narrative, the feminist version of reality. And you are showing what a bunch of liars feminists are. Although you might not want to say feminists are a bunch of liars. Now we come to level 3 of the information that you may wish to present on your website in your campus activism. And this is to explain to your campus community the character of feminist people as individuals. Now, this is where it gets tricky. This is where it becomes the most potentially inflammatory and or abusive. You want to make known to everybody. You want to explain to them, make very, very clear to them just what kind of people feminists are as individuals. And we know what kind of people they are. And if there is one behavior that characterizes them above all else, it is the fact that they tend to lie. And they lie again, and they come back and lie some more after they've done that. And then they take a little break, and then they come back and lie again. Feminists tend to be liars. Their whole empire is an empire of lies. They never would have got feminism off square one without telling a whole bunch of lies. They're not honest people. They're not truthful people. They spread falsehood in so many forms. And this is their chief distinguishing characteristic. And it's hard to believe just how deep this goes if you haven't studied feminism and feminists for as long as people like us have done. If you're just a member of the lay public, you have no idea how deep this goes. Feminists are the biggest liars the world has ever seen. And it must be made known specifically to the public that this is a distinguishing mark of feminism, of feminists and hence feminism as a whole. Feminism is all about lies and lying. It's about falsehood. It's about dishonesty. It's about untruth. And it's just that simple. It's about wrong information. It's about painting a misleading picture of reality. And you are here not only to undo some of the lies that they tell and supply correct information, you're here to instruct people and inform people specifically about the nature of feminism, about this aspect of feminist character that feminism tells a lot of lies. People need to be, or to have impressed upon them, just the fact specifically that yes, feminism is all about lying, not just correcting the lies, but getting to the root of it all by letting people know what feminism is, and that is a lying thing. So that's what you do in the third level of information. And even here, you should practice rhetorical discipline with your tonal mastery. Even here, you should avoid sounding abusive or damning. So you don't say, for example, you don't say feminists are a bunch of damn liars. You say feminists as individuals have a marked tendency to communicate incorrect information. You see? You hear the difference there? Feminists are liars. Feminists as individuals have a marked tendency to communicate incorrect information. So keep it in that tonality. That's the way you ought to do it. Don't be unnecessarily inflammatory. The nature of what you are communicating is in itself inflammatory. It's heavy stuff. And what you are saying can speak for itself. You don't need to fan the flames of melodrama. Just say what you've got to say. Just reveal the information that you've got to reveal and let it speak for itself. That's a point of rhetorical discipline. So there you have it. That's what you're going to communicate on your campus website, your non-feminist campus website. This is your platform and your entree into the conversation on the campus community, whether the feminist establishment in that community likes it or not. Let's see what they can do about it. And I think that brings us to the next point I wanted to discuss, which is drama. Drama. They're going to inflict drama on you if they haven't already done it in the early introductory stage. They're damn sure going to do it when you start laying on the information, like we've been discussing, especially when you get to the third level of information. Well, the second and the third one, because, you know, the first, second, and third levels of information here, they get progressively more controversial and tricky, and as the feminists would say, problematic. So there's a good chance that you will catch drama from the feminist establishment on your campus as you go progressively further and further into your program. So you got to be prepared for it. Now, the first thing you can do, now that you've established your website as a focal point in the life of the campus community, something that everybody knows about, something that people are surfing to on a daily basis when they sit down at their laptop or when they take out their mobile device. It's just a popular place for people to go on the internet. And then they go there and they see the latest thing that you put up there, and then they go share it with their friends. And you get a nice little buzz going on around the campus. And with any luck, you'll start to make some friends. And of course, you'll make enemies. You'll make friends and enemies. And we love them all. They're all useful. But anyway, yeah, there's a chance you're going to catch some heat from the feminist establishment, whether it's from the campus authorities, the administrators, or whether it's from student feminists or some combination of the two. It's very likely at some point you're going to start to catch some heat and they're going to whip some drama upon you. So having the website up gives you your platform. When all of this shit starts coming down, whatever they do to you, you've instantly got a billboard, a way to make your side of the story generally known, because of course people are going to be going there, they're going to be reading it, and you can immediately tell the world in your microcosm there on the campus what's going on. And when the feminist establishment is pulling some kind of shit on you, you talk about it on your website, and everybody on campus is reading about it, and everybody on campus gets pulled into the conversation, and you've got the public square effect going on, or something very like the public square effect going on. And oh, how sweet it will be. Fun, fun, fun. You're going to have a lot of fun with this. Hopefully I've made that clear. If they start something with you, no matter what it is, you will have your own public voice and your own real-time input into the narrative. And you'll have a ready-made audience who will be going back, if only because they enjoy a good show. Now, something else that might happen, and you really got to be careful about this. They might go after you. They might try to get you, if you're male anyway, they might try to go after you with a sexual assault charge. This is what feminists do, after all. And they're doing this more and more, and they're getting better and better at this. This is how they destroy their enemies. They set you up for a false sexual assault charge. And you're especially vulnerable to this on college campuses, what with all the Dear Colleague Title IX stuff that's going on there. So you got to look out. A brief rundown of what they might do. They might go for the classic honey trap thing, but I rather doubt that. What I think is more likely is that they will just, maybe they will try to set you up. They'll get several people who will hatch a plot together, and they will keep an eye on you, and they will look for a suitable moment. And when the time is right, when opportunity presents itself, they will strike. One of them will somehow manage to get alone with you in a room or some secluded area for 30 seconds. And then they'll run out screaming that you sexually assaulted them. And of course, they're setting you up, and they've got everything arranged. They've got their friends out there nearby as witnesses immediately. And then they've got you. Then they can railroad you. Okay, you see how that works? They'll try to put you into a setup of some kind. This is feminism, folks. This is how feminists operate. And you've got to expect this. You've got to expect the worst, especially when you're swimming in such shark-infested waters as the feminist-dominated university campus has become. So, you know the drill. Always be recording. That means keeping records, any kind of records. Keep a daily journal on paper or type it up on your computer. I kind of like the idea of just writing stuff in ballpoint pen in a notebook, frankly. But anyway, oh, and you'll want to have capture devices, video capture, audio capture, any combination thereof. If you have a group, if it's more than just you, you'll want to walk around together. You want to have your non-feminist companion there with you, someone who will have your back. You should always have a video capture device with you. There's all kinds of trouble that might come up if they don't try to set you up in a false sexual assault trap of some kind. You'll have people trying to harass you in one way or another on campus. You never know what they might do. Now be ready to capture that. Keep your daily journal, of course, but also be prepared to video capture that or audio capture that if at all possible. And walk around in twos rather than ones, especially if you are entering a critical stage where you suspect that some kind of heat like this is going to come down. Generally, you can sense it. If your antennae are sensitive enough, you'll know that they're out to get you at this particular point in time. and you'll know that you need to be on high alert with the possibility of such danger. Oh, and look out for your car, okay? If they know which car is yours, you never know what might happen to your car. You know, the tires, the windshield, whatever. In other words, my friends, be careful, because feminists can be mighty tricky people. Yeah, I hate to say it, but be careful, be careful. And so, I could go on and on about the possible things you can do in your campus activism. Something else you can do with your website, you can have Google Hangouts on your website. You can have podcasts on your website. Yeah, you can have a YouTube channel set up in conjunction with your website. But I like the idea of having scheduled Google Hangouts. You can advertise those around campus any way you can think of. And then people can come and listen to your Google Hangout. Hell, man, you could get a guest on there. You might even get a feminist on there as your guest at your Google Hangout. You never know once you put on your thinking cap and get creative, but there's all kinds of things you can do. So yeah, think of Google Hangouts as something to liven up your website and your campus activism as you begin to insert non-feminist alterity into the campus community, and you begin to make non-feminist voices heard, and you begin to promote the counter-feminist culture of critique and effectively challenge the feminist establishment. And this is how you hack the feminist cultural firewall. And the most gratifying thing about all of this is that you will be reaching other souls. You will be making friends. You will be changing the minds of people. You will be turning people's heads in a different direction. You will be saving souls. And tell me, how gratifying is that? And let's see. A few final notes here. Remember, I think I said this before, but remember, if you call yourself anti-feminist, they can frame you as the bad guys, okay? Because that sounds kind of nasty, anti-feminist. There still is a stigma that clings to the word anti-feminist. They are still successfully conflating that word with anti-female, even though anti-feminism has nothing to do with being anti-woman. It's not the same thing, but still, the concepts have been so married to each other in the public mind. They promoted that idea successfully for so long, they're going to continue to pretend that anti-feminist means the same thing as anti-female. And they're going to keep doing that as long as they can get away with it. Branding yourself as non-feminist helps to avoid that problem. So, if you call yourself non-feminist and nevertheless they attack you, then you can frame them as the bad guys. They are the bad guys. You're just not feminist. And boy, they don't plan to tolerate anybody who isn't feminist. This happens to be the truth. Ultimately, this is the truth. Feminism just wants to roll over everything and penetrate every corner of reality that it can. It doesn't want the campus community to be a feminist community, not just a campus community. It wants the world to be a feminist community. So if you're not a feminist and you refuse to become a feminist, you're a threat. You're a threat. It's just that they have to deal with the more openly flamboyant and inflammatory rebels first. But don't think for a minute that if you're just nice and quiet and meek and humble that they'll leave you alone. Ultimately, they have plans for you too. You're going to start feeling the pinch sooner or later, and more than likely regretting that you didn't speak up sooner. Okay? So, they're going to pull some shit like you are creating a hostile environment. They feel threatened by you when you walk around with that evil black t-shirt with the non-feminist logo printed on the front of it. They're going to feel threatened. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say you're creating a hostile environment. And they're going to tell all kinds of lies about you. You can count on that. Okay? So you have to stay one jump ahead of the game, and you have to beat them to the punch. You've got to set them up to be the bad guys. So you get to be the one who feels threatened. You're the one who is dealing with a hostile environment. What you are doing on the university campus is simply a microcosm of what needs to happen in the world at large. We are challenging the feminist narrative by offering an alternative. Okay, so if they feel threatened by your non-feminist t-shirt or your non-feminist coffee mug or your non-feminist lapel button fastened to your coat collar, whatever it is, fine. Then you break out your other t-shirt. Your other t-shirt, upon this t-shirt is printed a very simple slogan. Are you ready? Here's what it says. A simple slogan on a t-shirt. The slogan is, "The sky is blue." You put away your non-feminist logo shirt and you walk around campus rocking a t-shirt that says, "The sky is blue." They will know exactly what you're doing. And now get ready for the fun. When they try to construct a threat narrative around a t-shirt that says, "The sky is blue." The sky is blue. That's an official slogan, folks. The sky is blue is just code for I am not a feminist. Let that be known. The sky is blue means I am not a feminist. Now let them try to attack us for saying that the sky is blue. Let's see if they can pull that off. Should be interesting. Oh, yes, the sky is blue. Oh, one other thought I thought I would leave you with here. I'm about to wrap this up, but if you don't like the universal non-feminist logo that we put together, if you think you can do a better job, if you got something else in mind, then by all means, if you think you're up to it in the graphic design department, make your own non-feminist logo. Make your own non-feminist logo in any style that suits you. The only stipulation would be that the word non-feminist is very clearly printed, very clearly seen. You don't have to use the logo we've provided. I mean, it's kind of cool if you do to get the consistency of branding and all, but if you want to design your own non-feminist banner, by all means, feel free to do so. You might come up with something better. You never know. But we want to get some diversity. We want to get some variety in there. We want to undercut or to undermine the impression that we are some monolithic group. In fact, we are a bunch of different groups. We cannot be conflated with each other, and this will enhance that effect. Boy, I've said a lot. We are moving into the final half hour in our 2 hours. What else do I have on tap for this episode? Let me see here. By golly, it looks like we're close to the end. I think I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon. I do have another cue there, a link to a story in USA.com. You know what? I am exhausted. I don't think I'm going to read this article to you. I think I'm going to wrap the show up here pretty quick. I want to leave you with one final thought. The next episode of the Vanguard Report, that would be episode number 78. If all goes well, it might be a very special, very interesting episode. For one thing, it will probably be scheduled for Sunday rather than Monday. We do this to accommodate our guests. We're going to have, well, we hope to have guests on episode number 78 of the Vanguard Report. We hope to have a couple of feminists coming on the program. And we're going to have a nice little chat. Yes, folks, this is what we've dreamed of for a long time. We've been putting out the call. We've wanted to get a feminist on the program to discuss the question of coexistence between the feminist sector and the non-feminist sector. And we think we just might make that happen this next upcoming Sunday on Vanguard Report number 78. Now, it might fall through. We can't confirm anything yet, not totally. But we want to give you a heads up. We're waiting for the final confirmation from the people that are going to be on the show. The final confirmation from them. And once we get that, it'll be arriving through Skype. Once we get that, then a bulletin will go up on AVFM. Ideally, it will go up on AVFM a little more ahead of time than usual. And you'll see it. Just keep your eyes on AVFM. You'll see it. And it will go into a little more depth about what this thing is going to be. And we will name the people involved. We're going to say who they're going to be. That will appear on the bulletin. But until then, I'm not going to say any more than that. Just thought I'd share this with you to tantalize you. You might find it interesting. We're going to have feminists on the program. We're going to be having a nice little chat with some feminists. Now, I'll be on there. I think I'm going to get Kevin Wayne on there with me. So there'll be 4 of us in the chat, and that sounds pretty cozy. That sounds pretty crowded. But it ought to be interesting. So, now you know about that. We'll see how that turns out next Sunday. Looks like we've got about, 17 minutes left in the program. I think I'm going to wrap it up, folks. It's been a good episode. I wish I had a regular co-host. Maybe I'll get a regular co-host, or maybe I'll just keep hopping from one co-host to another. We'll see. But I'm going to wrap it up now. Episode number 77 of the Vanguard Report. Everybody, remember. Oh, before I go any further, I'll just let you know the email address. That's vanguardreport@usa.com. vanguardreport@usa.com. You want to get a hold of us for any reason, that's how you do it. All right. Remember, feminism is what we say it is. Feminism is what we say it is. Feminism is what we say it is. I'll see you again on episode number 78 of the Vanguard Report. Everybody, take care. Bye-bye.